back to the Weekend Warrior Show Recap Podcast. I'm Ty from the Unemployed Architects. Today I'm sitting down with a good friend, longtime friend, amazing musician Kyle Yap from Kyle Yap fame. So
very cool, buddy. Thank you for having me on. This is cool. I listened to a couple episodes after you brought it up to me at the. It might have been before the Benjamin Bash, but we definitely talked about it, and I looked back a couple episodes, and I was like, "Oh, this seems like right up my alley. Let's go have a."
I was kind of questioning because I know sometimes when I talk to you, I feel like the recent conversations we have get really deep dives into like music and stuff. But there's been times where I've talked to you where you just I feel like you don't want anything to do with it. You'd rather talk about anything but music.
I think it just depends. Within the last couple months, really within the last year and a half, there was a lot of not music related stuff going on in life, whether that be business, kind of stuff, just because I'm a real estate agent, home inspector now, a little bit of everything. So music is always going to be my passion play, but I think the times that you talked to me most recently, there was a lot of other stuff going on behind.
Well, the most recent times have been, I'm a sucker for just like talking shop,
Yeah.
But there's been some I think you came to one of my niece's birthday parties once, and it just sometimes it feels like when you're with the fam, you want to be like there with the fam, and I felt like I was like trying to get the musician talk out of you, and
yeah.
But I always have this feeling sometimes when musicians are like really good and really naturally talented, maybe it's not their favorite thing to talk about. I don't know.
I agree. I like talking shop. You and your JBL sound stuff that we always are trying to troubleshoot together when we explain it, like talking about how sound and everything like that in different rooms. I did like your guys' sound at when you had Low and I can't remember the bass player's name. Doug is such a good ad.
Yeah. He's a new addition, but he adds a lot when we do that kind of setup. But I mean, I don't know. Lately, I just I haven't really been doing a lot with the full band, or I don't get a lot of requests for it. I mean, I think bars a lot of times they would rather pay one guy to sound like as much like a full band. They would rather not pay the because when you play with that many people, you have to get money for each person. So obviously you're having to pay a lot more money for a full band. If I can get that sound kind of it's how you play most of the time as well.
But I think mine is more convenience based. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about the finances behind each venues or stuff like that on the show, but I do 100% understand how when you can do a lot of it yourself and save that time and energy. For me, it's convenience. I don't have the time for rehearsals or going down and practicing a full 3-hour, 4-hour set for a band, knowing just because we've done this before. I mean, I drummed for the Architects for a little while.
Yeah, but for those of you who don't know, he played for a year or two. Maybe 2.
Yeah, it was probably 25 shows. It wasn't like we were doing it every single weekend, but it was probably 2 a month, 3 a month at different points. And but yeah, about a year and a half. And I'd do it again, especially now. I know you like to have more practices and stuff like that, where I'm more like, let's just go play.
See what happens.
Let's just go do it, dude.
Well, and that's what we were kind of talking about before the cameras. Is playing drums is like such a different mentality sometimes. I mean, I'm by no means good, but it's like I'm like almost like almost okay. Like I can almost
you could go out and play a gig.
I don't know. I think a gig would be a stretch. I would have to definitely practice a lot to be able to do a gig. But I'm just saying, like, there's a certain amount of just like being in the moment when it comes to playing the drums that if you played long enough, which I do the foot percussion, my tempos aren't always great, but I get like the general idea, and I'm in the studio mixing drums and stuff, so it's like I got like a precursory understanding of it, and when I play, it's like nice to kind of shut the engine down and just be completely like solo focused on just the drums and
time and feel.
Yeah, and I feel like you're good enough where you could probably get away with doing that without practice, and I might need a couple rehearsals to really get me there. And I don't know that I'd want to do a 3-hour set of drumming. I feel like that would be rough.
Yeah, it's more tiring than physically tiring, but mentally it's less draining because you really just get to be listening.
Sit in the back seat, kinda.
Yeah.
I mean, I do the foot drum, so I mean, I can imagine, because I'm sitting there with my feet and my hands moving, and then I'm singing as well. So it's like I think I get the feel, but I don't know. There's something about being just the drums for, I'd feel so limited, kind of, you know. I don't know. I think part of it is I'm a little bit of a control freak to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if I can cover the percussion part as well as the, you know, I have that bass pedal, actually the bass pedal I bought from you that has the power, I still use that, you know, so and a lot of my songs will have like a little bit of a bass tone, which I don't know how much you've messed with that pedal.
I did mess with it a little bit. I think what would be almost kind of interesting, like talking about how you do the foot percussion and how I do like the loop, how those two are so similar yet so different approaches, but that's kind of like our mindset differences too. Like how we approach
Blair
stuff.
was always really into, like when we do solo shows, just him and I, you know, we'd trade off essentially. So I would do the foot percussion, then he would do the loop, then I would do the, you know, back and forth. Sometimes maybe he would do 2 songs, I would do 2 songs. But like, that was always nice too, because we'd give each other a break, you know, where you weren't having to like be complete. That's just the nice thing, you know, probably with playing with the humidors, you know, not having to be the center of the attention the whole time, you know, you get a little bit of a rest from that, but when your time comes, you know, I go back to this, you know, and we were talking about how I talk you up a lot, but,
it's appreciated.
But, I go back to, anytime you come up, a lot of times people know you for the singer-songwriter Kyle Yap. And then, like, I shoot him the video of This Might Be at the Castle Theater with Dan Hubbard of the Humidors. When that solo comes up in there and you're just, like, shredding hard. I'm like, well, that's a different side of Kyle that nobody's... I mean, people saw it, obviously, but not many, especially people that I know, don't know that side of you almost.
So there was different points, I don't know if you want to go, like, back in career, but, like, I was in a band called Shade Tree, and I was... de facto backup singer and just guitar player, and part of me absolutely loves that role.
Yeah,
the support cast, the harmonies, the more movement on stage, the less tied to a microphone.
The harmonies you do with Hubbard, I just always felt like were such a good addition to. Like, it just seemed
it's
like
magic.
Yeah. I mean, they always were like dead on, and they just sounded great. And you know, I think a lot of people say this probably, but so if you're picking somebody to be in your band, and you know, you have one just shredding guitar player but can't sing, and one like pretty good guitar player that can also sing. You know, you might pick the singer just to get those backup vocals, but then you kind of have both things, you know. So it's such
I appreciate that.
Well, you know, I just like I said in that podcast, sometimes I watch you play. And I just get so, like, I get angry that it looks so easy for you sometimes. I know it's not. I know you've had to earn it. It's not like something you were just born.
It's time.
Right. Yeah. But just like the naturalness of how you play guitar. Just, and the vocals too. I mean, it looks effortless. I know it's not effortless, but that's the part that, you know, I feel like I'm fighting a war if you look at my face. While I'm playing, like, it's scary. It's a scary thing sometimes. Scary faces I make. You watch you play, you're just like there. Everything's pretty, you know, everything's solid, but you're not trying to, you know, it doesn't look like you're really trying that hard to, and it just sounds good.
I think that's part of it. Like, I mean, you're right on that same point where you've probably done 100 shows in some years and 60 shows in other years, and COVID threw it all to hell, but. When you do the same thing over and over, part of it can be like put on autopilot.
Right.
And as long as, I mean, that's another thing I'm guilty of, is I should be more of an original artist. I just don't write as much as I should, and it just becomes so second nature to just play the covers just because it's so easy to think about.
I have this theory with that too, is like when you're at a bar and you know, you're playing. Especially if I'm having like a little bit of an off night. It's like, okay, well, I could shove some originals that might not sound great that these people have never heard before because I'm just like having an off night. I could shove it down their throat, or I could just play Journey Don't Stop Believin' and have everybody sing every line, even though I sound like shit.
Yeah, it's hard to... because
I think it takes great courage to go up there. That's one thing. I sat down with Cody, Chicago Farmer, and one thing I asked him, and he didn't really have a great answer. He didn't really say much about it, honestly, but I was just like, because I've seen him play a ton where he does covers, you know, he can do a lot of covers, but to have those kind of in your back pocket, but then go up there and just choose to do all originals. You know, you could slay the night, you could kill everybody in there, everybody would have an awesome time, but to make that choice to just do originals, it's such a hard choice to make.
I think that's something worth diving into over time. Because you and I are both in that same boat. Like, you've got a lot more originals than I do. That's one thing. But is there a good way to approach it? Do we play, you know, an original? Always start and end with an original. That's probably something we should always force ourselves to do.
And I do that just almost for warm-up sake. Like, I have a couple songs that I've written that are easy to sing, so I usually start with those just to kind of ease into my set.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times with a 3-hour set, I'm not doing an extensive warm-up before, you know. I'm just
jumping. Be doing it.
I can only imagine, that you probably just show up, plug in, and play most of the time.
I used to get there. I hear you always want to get to the gig an hour and a half or sometimes 2 hours.
I shoot for 2 hours. A lot of times it ends up only being an hour. But a gig like that where I'm, you know, I change my setup like every time. Especially,
that's part of the battle.
Yeah. And, you know, I think about the bar, like where am I playing? And then I think about, you know, Lo and Doug are playing with me. Obviously, that's a different thing too. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it with the gear I have and make it as easy as possible too. But then it's like, so I try one setup and I think I got it, and then I won't play that. You know, I won't play with them, and I'll have new gear by the time we play together again. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, okay, well, how do I Jimmy rig this to work? You know, it's a lot of that. But you know, with you, I feel like you keep it as simple as possible,
as simple as I can,
and you easy setup, easy tear down. Like that. Those are like big.
I can set up drunk. I can tear down drunk. I usually, I mean, I'm not leaving a bar just schwasty drunk all the time.
Right.
Don't get that impression, but like that's kind of, you know, if I'm
you
doing
should
a
be able
party,
to. Not necessarily that you do that, but you should be able to tear. Yeah, I don't. And I don't drink, so maybe that's my problem. I don't use it as my bar to.
Well, that's a good thing. It's a good problem to not have.
It's a fun way to say
so
it.
yeah, if we were to try to find that balance between originals and covers, let's talk about this. How would we approach this so that we can be consistent, we can repeat this, and make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to not just being a cover artist? How can we make that transition a little bit more like Cody and Ed have?
There are some bars that are like, we like you to do mostly covers, and there are some shows, like I just booked this one up north that it's a 2-hour set. They said we like mostly originals, you know, so I'll do mostly originals. A lot of them are up in the air, but I don't know, I get certain vibes. Yeah, I get certain vibes. I always listen to the crowd, you know, what is the crowd liking? If they're liking, you know, kind of covers and they're leaning towards, you know, kind of old school, like country type stuff, I have like a path of songs I'm probably going to play of my originals and, you know, covers that I'm going to play as well. But it's a guessing game a lot, I feel like.
How's the vibe?
I think 50-50 is the... You know, for a 3-hour set, I think 50-50 would be maybe ideal. Mm-hmm. You know, 50% originals, 50% covers. But, and the other thing too, I wonder if you have this problem because you know a lot of songs. It's like sometimes I get lost in like, what should I? I mean, I have like a pretty standard 3-hour set.
You got your 25 songs a year are automatic go-tos.
You get bored with that
real quick.
You especially. It always amazes me. You're like a radio. Like there's been so many times where I've seen you BS a song that you didn't really know, and and I'm just like, how does he even do that? I don't have that. I don't know. I don't have that, like, I can't just copy somebody's vocal line from memory. You know, I have to really, like, rehearse it to get there.
I think you don't give yourself enough credit on a lot of things. Part of why I can do that, why that skill is within me, is that I would try that when I was younger, just listen to the radio and just try to learn the songs. But teaching, which you're doing now, the song structures in American music are so predictable.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the chord selections, the rhythms, the melodies. Especially
the vocal melodies and the lyrics are the thing that I just can't pull up automatically.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like
you can figure out the chords in this.
I could probably figure out the chords if you gave me a few minutes, or if I just look them up really quick. Yeah. I can't do anything off an iPad. I mean, I kind of hate that.
Yeah.
Like staring at stuff. while you're playing. I mean, if it's a new song, that's one thing. But I mean, there was a time where I think I would watch you play a lot, and it seemed like you knew like almost 500 songs or something ridiculous. Like,
probably.
Yeah, it was just so nuts that you could play that many. And I should say this, like when I first came to Bloomington, you were a big inspiration as far as like how I do everything I do, because I would go out and watch you play, and I'd be like, okay, well, that's how he does it. He's getting work, and he sounds great, so that's maybe somebody I should kind of copy. So I should say thank you, I guess, for...
it's a walking experiment, so I mean...
Yeah, it always is. There's no handbook.
And one of the things that I feel like, and again, I don't know if you like talking finances and stuff like that.
I don't care. This isn't... There's nothing really too off limits.
Yeah,
so.
There's no bar owners or anything like that calling us and being like,
well,
you can't be talking behind the scenes about how much you're making here and there, but...
well, and the other thing is, you don't want to maybe call specific bars out or anything, but I mean, you can generally, speak, I think.
Do you want to say how much you're normally getting, like, per 3-hour gig? Right now, my base charge for a bar, 3 hours at the very least, and there's a very few exceptions, is usually $350 for 3 hours. Private parties usually try to get at least $450 to $500. And corporate stuff or anything like that, which are rare, and they're not always easy to come by, but like $600 to $700. And then I do weddings and stuff like that where...
Me too. I don't get asked
the ceremony,
a whole ton, but
the ceremony is 2 hours, probably 25-35 minutes, but it's learning 6 to 7 songs. $200 just for the ceremony, $200 just for the cocktail hour, because it's still the setup time and tear down time, and then like you're taking away a gig night by having me do that. If it's the reception, they need a microphone, they need lights.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
$1,000. I'm $1,000 at minimum.
It's amazing how many times that you get to one of those things that's like a wedding, and you would think it would be like super planned out, that you get there and they're like,
nope,
we don't have a microphone, can we use your...
Yeah.
or like, can we play music off your system? Like, just complete like no forethought, which is fine. I'm always happy to help, but it's just like, you have all these people here and you organized everything except this one thing. It's pretty wild, but again, it's not a big deal. I've been in the habit of asking these questions when they ask me to do weddings beforehand, because I've been in those situations where I show up and I'm like, well, I don't really have a cable that will reach all the way to the wedding party table. You can come over here and do the speeches if you like, or but it's just funny that it's such an afterthought. I think in general, live music in a lot of ways is such an afterthought for a lot of places and people.
Always events. I mean, it's all. They rarely know what all goes into it, other than just show up and play. I mean, well, how hard could that possibly be?
And that's why I think a lot of times they don't try to they don't think you deserve maybe a lot of money for doing that. And to an extent, I understand, but it is a lot of legwork.
Yeah.
Like, you're building this set over, me and you probably 10, 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
I mean, being able to do your own sound, I mean, that is something that regular people just, I feel like, have no concept of, like, because you go and see a show, a lot of people are just like, it wasn't very good, and it's like, well, if you were really listening, the vocals weren't turned up very good. He probably had a bad monitor mix. Everybody has an off night too, so there's that. What was he wearing? Like, it's just like there's so many tiny things that affect the over. So I always say you should give a band maybe 2 or 3 times of seeing them. If they weren't terrible, if it's like just music you don't like, obviously don't go see them. But if you're into the music, maybe give them more of a chance. And a lot of people like us, we don't have these professional sound engineers that are, that's one thing about the Leah Marlene thing. I think is a huge benefit, because I mean, performing at that scale is nuts. I mean, I can't even imagine being on that like national television and not being. I mean, she kept it so cool. She sang really well on most things she did. Yeah. And but just I'm sure they have people there that kind of coach you up on like,
oh, for sure,
like this is how your in-ears should be mixed and stuff like that. That just like even I don't I'm just guessing every time I do anything. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously there's trial and error. I have a history of trying things, but it's just it's a hard thing to wrap your head around if you don't know much about it. So I feel like a lot of listeners don't really take that into account.
Yeah. For your solo stuff versus your band stuff, and I know you said you're not doing as much of the band stuff because you got to pay more people and all that kind of extra that goes into it. Is there like where do you start making that? How do you start pushing that more, or do you want to start pushing that more? Do you want to keep doing just the solo stuff just because it's easier and more convenient, or with low?
Right now, it's like that's my main form of income, So that and teaching. So it's like I don't really want to. It's hard to be like that, have that mindset. But it's I have to survive to a point, So I got to do a lot of solo shows to kind of make that happen, I think. But I'm not. I mean, the full band stuff. I always look at it like right now I'm putting in a bunch of legwork. So if the same people want to play with me in a few years, if I got some sort of more of a platform or more of like a somebody that is going to put a little bit money to get a tour together, But as of now, it's more like I'll just keep building that legwork. Because I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is the pressure, and like I just did this thing on TV that I was telling you about, and like if you think about somebody performing on TV, okay, so you got the nerves thing, right? You're nervous. You have to be practiced because I mean you have to the nerves can't affect your performance. You're trying to keep that in check. So I did 24 songs, right? So I'm trying to make 24 songs sound as good as possible. You add just one more person in there, okay? So let's say just a person that's not in my band, a keyboard player, right? And they sing backup vocals as well. So you add that in, then you're taking... So if I have, out of those 24, I have 17 good songs, or 14 good songs, let's say. On 5 of those,
give yourself a ton of credit.
On 5 of those, maybe the keyboard messed up.
Yeah.
So then you're ruining those takes. And then maybe 2 other ones, the backing vocals were weird. And the more people you add, for it to be a coherent, like, good performance, everybody would have to be on their A game for every song. You'd have to be so, like, dialed in, and I just don't feel like that's where we're at.
The problem I think with that is those people that you're hearing and you're comparing yourself against are the people who are literally doing this day in, day out, all day long, whereas bass player or keyboard player locally, they've all got their 40-hour-a-week job, so it's not their primary. So you're really, I mean, we are professional musicians. You especially are right now are making your sole income off of music. I have a couple like other random stuff that I go through between inspecting real estate and rentals and still doing gigs. Creating other revenue streams is going to be hugely beneficial for you as well, but the big thing I think is that you can't compare yourself to those people who are literally getting paid, $3,000 to $5,000 for on live TV performance and stuff like that.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to. I'm not taking away from anybody that I play with. What I'm saying is I'm setting myself up to have the most probable success.
Yeah, I get it. Okay.
That's
a roster.
Yeah.
You're building with your developmental team and your
my
people. Well, I mean, your people your tools, like if people who can come on and do this section with you, or even when you go into the studio where they're doing it live. I've got this idea, and I'd love you to be a part of it too, because I think it would be so cool. I don't like learning stuff that I'm not interested in, so learning how to do camera, learning how to do a podcast, I would like to do a podcast, I would like to do live videos, like create them, but as far as the editing and getting the gear and the microphone and all the setup, I'd much rather just go and do it. I would like to have some sort of collaboration with you on some of that stuff, but the idea that I want to do is I want to call it the Pawn Shop series, where we and whoever, 2 or 3 musicians with 3 original songs in mind, practice and do whatever you got to do beforehand, but show up to a pawn shop, get the pawn shop's approval, obviously, pull stuff right off the shelf, 3 songs, 2 or 3 different camera angles, sound recorded, and just, this is our content. Like, we're using stuff we're getting off the wall intentionally, doing a very impromptu or somewhat planned and scripted, but at least the idea is just to get into this one place, pick off the instruments that we've never played before, and then do 3 songs, and do that at every pawn shop every town you ever play in. Like, hey, can we come in here, record 3 songs, and 3 different songs every time. Probably try to stick to mostly originals because you don't have to fight for rights and stuff like that. But I think that that's such a cool series that we could create.
Yeah, I think that anything like that is neat, and it kind of has like you're making musical content as well as a podcast, right? That's because you said it would be a podcast, kind of.
I mean, it's just a platform, and nowadays with the internet changing so drastically, I mean, you could throw these little things on TikTok and have 100,000 followers at the end of just 6 weeks of doing this once a week or twice a week kind of thing. The name of the game nowadays is content creation. And you guys are doing people like you who do podcasts and have the time and energy and the willpower to kind of to learn all this stuff. I'd much rather just pay someone to do it, and just I want to do the fun part and hire out the other parts that I'm not so good at.
I feel like I've slowly come to the realization throughout doing this for so long is that nobody's going to do it for me. So I just have to buckle up and grind my teeth. A lot of it is sheer willpower. Yeah. I'm not very good at the editing stuff, but I mean I know how to do it. Yeah. And, it's like anything else, it's, a learning curve. It's going to take you a while to kind of get it. But, I mean, it's not, a lot of the stuff you can figure out pretty quick. Like, the video editing, the buddy that I was saying stayed with me, Ryan Wolf, staying with me right now, but he is a whiz when it comes to video editing. Like, we did this video for the Mighty Vermilion. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but Pontiac, where I'm just walking around Pontiac.
That was probably 3 or 4 years ago.
It was a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was still drumming, maybe it came out right after I was done drumming.
Yeah, it was probably somewhere around there that it would have. But I mean, we spent 3 hours shooting it. He edited it in an hour on his phone. Like after, it was just like crazy to watch him.
How quick it comes.
Yeah, and I mean he's like that with recording. A lot of his recordings sound pretty professional. I mean, and he doesn't. Some of the older ones that caught my ear initially, he was doing a first generation iPad with the iPad microphone, and he was making them sound pretty legit. Like,
that's cool.
So I mean, very lo-fi, but I mean, I remember being like, "Oh, what studio did you record this in?" Like, because I thought it was good enough quality that and back then on those first generation, I think you could only have like 8 tracks. Yeah. So I mean, doing a lot with a little is kind of the name of the game, and I've tried to learn a lot from him. Just to kind of carry that, even with the recording process, because I get so stuck in the studio sometimes with it that it's like, and the studio is so expensive. You have all it's nice for the fact that you have all these capabilities. You can literally add any instrument you can think of to a song, but if you're trying to figure out that instrument instead of already knowing what you want it to sound like, you're killing money.
Where have you been going?
I go to Eclipse.
Okay, I gotta get in there too.
Eclipse is great. Eric is amazing. He just so I did that TV thing, and they sent me the WAV files. So I took it over there to mix and master, and man, do they sound so much better than when they were on TV. Yeah. I mean, the guy there did a good job, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure I'm just
He was more or less capturing.
Yeah, and he was just, trying to, I'm one musician of a whole line that he has to do it every week. He's just trying to get, push stuff out. He's not like ISO focusing on this one performance that, obviously I care probably a lot more about. So I'm going to release it as an album, but it's like, it is crazy because it's just the WAV file. It's not like individual tracks, but the way that he could make them sound, just from that, it just brought everything.
It was like a stereo mix, not like your guitar in one channel, your mic in one channel.
It
was just a stereo overall.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So the fact that he can take that and polish that up so nice is crazy. And then I mean we've done crazy like probably 50 track songs where we're adding stuff. He's an amazing keyboard. He's played some organ on stuff, and just I don't know. He just has such a good ear. And the one thing I like about him more than some of the other people I've recorded with sometimes, not Jeff. Jeff's awesome too, but he was just he's always so dialed into whatever he's doing. Like when you're in there, he's all about whatever makes like he shows. he doesn't. I've seen him with other musicians that maybe aren't my favorite genre of music, but he's as dialed in with any genre of music. Like he can be in the rap, but he's just there in the moment. How can we make this the best? And he's mentality, very musical. Yeah, that mentality is, I think, priceless, because he doesn't discern what he likes necessarily. Maybe, you know what I mean? He's just like, I'm here. We're gonna make the best shit possible.
Yep.
And that's a great mentality to have. And he's just a super reasonable guy in general. I think, you know, he's always just trying to do what's best for the song, and I think that's and he's good at it. It's not like.
Do you mind if I mean, maybe I'll ask this off camera, but how much he charges an hour?
I don't know. It varies. I think is the answer.
Project, yeah.
Well, I think that, you know, I might be grandfathered in a little bit because I've been recording at that studio for a really long time. So a new client, you know, he might have different prices for. But I think, and honestly, I don't. You know, he at the end of the session, I'm like, how much do I owe you? He tells me, I give him the money. I don't really be like, all right, it's this much. Yeah. But I think the last time he told me it was $65 an hour, which adds up pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, this last thing I did was 17 tracks, all just singular wave files, and just, you know, mixing them, and I'm super picky, so of course I had to go back like twice. But you know, it wasn't cheap, even though it wasn't like an extensive. You know, maybe there weren't 30 tracks, but there was 17 individual tracks. So
that
still,
you wanted to focus on.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It's the best, and I'm going to be able to sync them up to the multicam videos. So I'm hoping that this is going to get me a lot more booking.
Content, yeah. And press kit kind of stuff too.
Right. Well, I think, you know, just having. You know, like I was telling you earlier, bookers probably take about 30 seconds to decide whether you're okay enough. So just having like the best song, the first song on a playlist with the multicam shot with the best audio, you know, I feel like that's going to be hopefully easier for me to book off that. And it's like it's pretty true to what I sound like. Like with a studio, you can kind of fancy it up and, you know, maybe polish up a few things. This is more raw, you know. It's not.
That's my favorite. I want it to sound real. I don't like. Yeah, there's something really cool about those pop songs that have everything perfectly in time and everything's perfect pitch. And when you hear a subwoofer, it's just like the nicest even wave tone without the, you know, the organic nature of an actual bass string when it's synthesized, and then the auto tune on top of it. Yeah, it sounds great, and most of the time these pop songs, I mean, they stop, they fucking kick it. And I'm a big fan of some of that stuff. It's just. I want to hear it raw, natural, realistic, as if it's in front of me, and that's how I want to play. Like, part of me loves I had Pro Tools growing up, and I tried to create these cool, dense soundscapes and layers of harmonies and 3 guitar tracks and all that kind of extra stuff. But setting up the microphones was never my favorite. Doing the editing, doing the computer work, I would much rather be the musical sound and let someone else worry about the capturing it, but I got to find that right team. And I think that was one of the things that we've always tried to do together is collaborate on. And we even tried it with the Blue Room Music Collective when we had a kid right after it kind of started, and I just couldn't focus on it as much as I wanted to. But someone that does the booking for 8 groups in town and all the marketing, and then having a podcast that features each one of these artists every month.
Morgan was pretty good about that when she was doing it. I mean, she had a lot of places. Yeah. I think it got to a point where she had too many bands as well, but you know, she was pretty good about that. But that was like the only side of the Blue Room thing that
took off.
Yeah, and you know, that was still, you know, I appreciate it. It was great, but it's you know, you were looking more for like a multi-tiered, like, you know,
someone that has their specific role. Like, hey, if we want to go to the studio, this is the guy we go to. All of us can kind of pitch in, help make this guy, you know, some semblance of not necessarily a career out of 8 groups, but at least having a base foundation to be able to do it long term. And we know that, hey, we got this person who's always helping us try to find new venues and booking. We're sharing, collaborating on. Here's our venue list. Here's how much we charge. Like almost like a music union, so to speak. And
I always think about that, but it's like, you know, it's so hard to like think because you'd have to spend a lot of time, you know, getting everything set up, and it's just like I think that's what stands in in the way I would love if it was more of a collective,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, more of like a group of like-minded people
Mm-hmm.
trying to kind of doing the same thing. But it would be hard to keep everybody happy
and motivated.
Yeah, and
why am I booking you and promoting you when I haven't played a gig in 2 weeks or something
Right.
like that?
Yeah, there has to be like a general like wellness kind of for the common good kind of attitude.
A co-op, so maybe there has to be some sort of financial incentive, like, you know, like a employee-owned gas stations, to where like, okay, as profitable as the business is, we all benefit together, so that it's not just my gigs are making me money.
I think the problem,
that's a bigger asset.
The problem is, like you were saying earlier, with the like content is like the main thing that a lot of musicians need to focus on. But I think a lot of musicians don't look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
They think about what makes me money now.
Yeah, exactly. And the content thing is you need to have a lot of it. And I mean, I put out a lot, but it's not even, compared to some people, like it's like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're putting out a song every 6 weeks on Spotify. They're, you know, they have their podcast, they put out live clips, they make goofy videos. You know, and I feel like with the TikTok, that's what you need to do. You need to make like a funny video that has your music as just like the background music. Mm-hmm. I think that's what a lot of musicians do. I don't use it that way. I just record me playing live and nobody watches them. I definitely don't utilize, but it does have really easy to use editing, like so. I mean, for somebody like you who doesn't want to learn like the ins and outs of the actual video editing, you can do a lot with that TikTok app.
I'd rather just pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be the person that's in the video, but I don't want to be the person that's also recording it, that's also editing it, that's also mixing it. And I know that's not how today's society works, but that's what would make me happy.
I mean, I think with me, like, I'm the same way. I would love to do that. I think the last thing the thing I'm about to release is the only thing where it's been kind of like that, because I had, you know, a guy there that night mixing it and sending it, capturing it with all the microphones. I was just kind of there to play. And then I had Eric, you know, kind of follow up with the mixing. But it's more that's the exception, not the rule. You know, it's waiting for somebody to, you know. I was lucky. I got a good opportunity and I jumped on it. And I'm trying to. I think a lot of people sometimes would think, you know, I was on TV, that was cool, and just be done. Like that was the end of.
Yeah, keep that. You got the content now.
But what can you? Yeah, how can you mine more content out of things? Yeah. Like that's a big thing that I don't think enough musicians may. And again, I'm speaking maybe more locally than I am nationally, because I mean, if you're a national act, obviously you're
not on the same tier as us. Sorry, right. You're not on the same tier as us. Let's talk about it like that.
you're a different level, and you might have a team behind you, which is. You know, I think of Clayton Shea a lot. I think
he's got a team down there.
Yeah, and you see what he's doing, and it's all good videos. It's all great sounding, and
I like that guy a lot.
Yeah, you played with him.
Taught him everything he knows. Let me tell you what.
Right. And but I mean, you know, you watch because I follow him, and I try to, like, if I can, you know, take a couple ideas from what he's doing, but and maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe he does do it all himself. But I get the feeling from watching it that he has more of a, you know, a collaborate. It's more of a collaboration of efforts down in Nashville with him. And, you know, when it's just you, it's so hard to manage all the different facets.
You can't.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it just feels overwhelming and impossible at all times. Even if you put out a lot of stuff. Like, I feel like I don't. Like, I'm not a slacker, you know. I put out stuff, but compared to, you know, just like a person that has a team and is above where I'm at, I feel like I'm doing nothing.
We can't compare ourselves to them.
Well, that should be the mentality.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess I don't really follow that. I mean, I get the concept of why I shouldn't do it, but I can't not. You know what I mean?
I think we should do this another time. I think this would be This is something I would like to be a guest again in, say, a month or two. Maybe once a quarter.
I'm fine with that. I as far as, you know, the podcast goes, I just, you know, I pretty much do it for fun. I feel also like, I'm trying to be a better communicator in a lot of ways, like trying to learn how to, talk to people better, because that is a big part of being a musician that I neglected for a very, very long time, is the social aspect, which I do think you get points on that too, because you're
horrible at the names though.
Oh, I am too. I can't remember a name to save my life,
yeah.
but I don't know. You were like announcing at that last party
the Benjamin Bash.
Yeah.
That's more out of necessity because she's telling me what to do, and
I know, but you just jump in, with both feet, and you're just play around and just have like a kind of carefree attitude, and I get kind of in my head about things like that. But just general conversation, sometimes I get kind of stuck at a certain point where it's like I don't really know how to. I'm
trying to read you as a person, trying to figure out how natural and original I should be or organic I should be versus are you just looking for quick communication? That's the kind of thing that I feel like not every conversation is transactional, and sometimes we get that way, especially with bar owners or
and then just like a general fan that comes up and talk to you. It's like you want to leave it, because if they're saying like nice things, obviously you want to leave them with a good connection you had with them, but sometimes you just get I don't know. I get points where I'm just like blocked up, and I'm like, what should I say? I should say something. Where do you work at?
How about them politics?
that is something I won't say at all.
So where do you get your news from?
Yeah, not so much. That's usually a clear divider, and it'll happen the other way.
I love when people on both sides, because I'm not partisan because I hate both parties. I'm an equal opportunity hater, so both parties are disgusting in their own facets. But I love to mess with people in the slightest of ways so that they don't know what I am, but they definitely don't know if I agree with them or not.
Yeah, I kind of ride that line when politics do come up, because it's like I know that if I don't agree with somebody, if I'm just like, no, that's completely wrong, they're just gonna completely be like, well, I don't like this person.
Yeah.
What I usually will is I'll be on their side, and then I'll point out maybe one small thing I disagree with.
One logical fallacy or
it's like, I hate both parties. I'll say that a lot, like you just said, and then I'll be like, well, this guy said this. I wasn't opposed to him till maybe this line.
And just kind of like, are you willing to cross that line in the sand?
Yeah. Just to like, I'm on your team, but maybe there's a little bit of problem with our team.
Oh, that's a good way to do it.
But it doesn't come up a lot. But when it does, that's usually kind of how I manage it, or I just completely avoid it at all costs, because somebody really wants to talk about politics, and you can just tell that it's going to be a long. If I let them get going, or I start to interact with them, it can be ridiculous. Yeah. It just go on forever too. Yeah. They just won't stop. But sometimes it's fun to kind of, see what you can. See if people, why they think so hard on something. Like that's one thing I can never really completely understand, is like, I don't like a lot of things as far as the politics goes, but I don't really, it's like I don't believe in anything wholeheartedly. Like if somebody came to me and was like, well, I mean there's not even a guy or a woman that I'm like, oh, this person should be president or whatever, but if somebody came to, if the guy I voted for or something, if they were like, well, what about this thing? I'd be like, yeah, you're probably right. Like, I don't deep dive enough.
Yeah.
And I don't, my mind's very easily changed, I think, is what, I try not to dig my heels in too hard on anything.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with just like general public, and you don't know how, especially if that person is pivotal for your success or failure of a night or an evening or a gig or
so more like a booker, you mean?
Yeah,
or like just bar owner.
Bar owners. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Like certain people will fall into a category where you might have a little bit more pull or sway than I should be, angering you, prodding the bull, whatever, so to speak. But maybe that's a talk for another day when we do the political podcast. That's next week live at Tuesday at 2 p.m. Here, check it right out. TyJon, Charlie, thank you, Tyler Schweitzer.
Oh, you're ready to wrap her up.
I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, man.
I want to do it again, though.
Yeah.
I got to relieve my babysitter.
We need to get into the history, I think, a little bit more next time.
Okay.
Because that's usually something I like to kind of go through Because I mean, you have a long history of playing, and I mean it's a pretty interesting story, and I think that it would be interesting to, because it is. So let's just end it this way. The Weekend Warrior Show recap podcast. So the idea of the podcast is, we recap shows. Is there any like just either super memorable show or super crazy story that happened, or just it's not, it doesn't have to say, it doesn't have to be the craziest, but just something from a show that like it might be interesting.
I'm 35 now. About 15 years ago, and right around April, I think it was, I was in a band called Shade Tree. Shade Tree was a completely independent band, but we had gotten hooked up with this company called Young American Showcase, and what we were doing was going to elementary schools, junior highs, and high schools, and doing a anti-bullying school assembly that was completely just a straight up rock show. So there was 2 or 3 originals thrown in, a bunch of covers, some skits along the way. One of the lead singer would come out dressed as Elvis and do a "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog," and he would point at one of the teachers. All the kids would laugh, and then so after the school assembly part of it, where we were talking about anti-bullying message, but hey, come take a look at us. We play quite literally 10 to 12 shows a week in schools, and then at the end of the week we would do the night show, which is where we invited kids from all over the area, or all over this this school this night show, this school this night show. If depending on how close they were together, we could do 3 or 4 schools being sent to the same show. The night show is where we charged tickets and all that kind of stuff, but there was one event where I have a guitar solo in the middle where everyone else walks off stage. I get about 2.5 minutes to kind of play something, shred a little bit, play little nits and pieces of memorable guitar solos. But towards the end of it, I got up on one of the speakers, and when I was playing, I was really impressing these 14 to 16-year-old kids. They were all having a really good time. But I went to jump down off this sub, which is about 6 feet tall, and the speak-on cable that was held to the master right on top of the sub tripped up my foot, and I've got my Gibson Les Paul as I'm falling head first onto the ground from 6 feet tall, catch the guitar neck with my right hand and kind of hold it up towards my left shoulder, and then try to catch myself with my left arm, and it hyperextends in front of all these kids. So I clearly am in discomfort, but I'm in front, no one else is on stage, right. So like, all right, I gotta do something. So I stood up. My elbow seemed like it was locked up quite a bit, so I pushed my guitar neck down to my hand, which was stick straight, like couldn't bend my elbow up or down or anything like that. So pushed the guitar down like this, and just played with what I could, like a couple hammer-ons, like fast, and then like clicked my whammy pedal, so it was like clearly not moving my elbow at any point.
Right.
And it was like ding, hit a chord. I had wireless at the time, so I walked back behind the curtain and was like, all right, guys, you got to come up here. I hurt my elbow real bad. So we get into the next song. Luckily, there's another guitar player in the band, so he was able to play quite a bit of it. And it started to get to the point where I could start moving. It wasn't as painful, so I reached down between my knees with my hand between my knees and pulled as hard as I could, and the elbow kind of, I don't know if it had been out of place, but it definitely felt a lot looser after I pulled it. So it got kind of moved into a position where I could bend it. Finished the show out, and then had to go to the ER the next day because of the swelling got so bad. But it still had a gig that evening.
Couldn't really move it a whole lot after.
It was in a sling. We had 4 other shows that week, so this happened on a Wednesday night, and then Thursday morning went to the ER, had an X-ray and all that. It wasn't broken or anything like that. Put me in a sling. Went immediately to another show. Took the sling off to play with a bunch of Tylenol in my system. Put it back in the sling. Didn't have to load up the big speakers at all, which was a fantastic part of this. And then, about a week later, it was perfectly fine again and able to do everything. But that was my craziest, most memorable show thus far.
Yeah, and I bet the adrenaline just kind of carried you through.
Yeah, and it's weird just being there was probably 100 kids. I mean, it's not a huge, they're not massive shows, but I think this is somewhere in Kentucky. Around Shelbyville or something like that, and it's 100 kids, darked out gymnasium with our lights and our everything like that, with a big speaker. We're on the gym floor of a high school, and there's you're the only person, everyone's eyes on you. There's a couple of them like, oh, and I'm just like, because you could hear when I hit the ground, it's like on the guitar, just nothing but oh, that didn't sound right, and So yeah, that was my most memorable performance gig, but that was 15 years ago at this point. So it's something to say. I peaked 15 years ago. That's my most memorable thing.
Well, I'm sure
I also started drinking thereafter when I turned 21.
So then you don't remember.
There's a lot I don't remember.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and yeah, I'd love to have you back to talk more history on the Kyle Yap experience.
Yep.
And kind of go through it with you. But thanks again for being on, and I'll post this before too long. I'll be sure to put all your links. Check out Kyle Yap. Where at?
KyleYap.com, which leads to a landing page where you can go to either real estate or music. Nowadays, I'm going to start focusing more on that music side of it. Still doing real estate sales, but KyleYap.com, Kyle Yap Music on Facebook, Yapper13 on TikTok.
There you go.
I think it's just Kyle Yap Music or just Kyle Yap on Instagram. I need to get better at
and
social media.
Soon he's going to be on Spotify and Apple.
Soon on Spotify and all that kind of good stuff. So thank you very much, bud, for giving me a fun platform, and I appreciate all the love.
Thanks. Yep.
See you, dude.
Have a good one. Bye.